What does Kalen DeBoer know that Hugh Freeze doesn't? Well, we could spend hours and hours discussing that, answering that question. Obviously, Kalen DeBoer has Alabama on a roll, coming off another ranked win over Vanderbilt. Alabama had its revenge. First time that sentence has ever been uttered in the history of man. Got its revenge on Vanderbilt. Put a sock in Diego Pavia. There was some extracurricular verbalizing after the game. And listen, if you're a grown man, and I know Diego Pavia is 24. He's not a kid. He's not a child. And he egged on a lot of that leading up to the game. Some of the extra tension, some of the extra vibe that attended that game. But if you're in your 40s or 50s or 60s or whatever Mr. Cargo Shorts was, the Alabama fan in the end zone seats at Bryant-Denny, as Vanderbilt was walking off the field after Alabama's 30-14 win, be happy for your team. Don't go down to the rail and get in a verbal jousting match with Diego Pavia or any player. Shouldn't you be happy that your team won? Why would you feel compelled to go chirp at the Vanderbilt quarterback? And again, I understand. Diego Pavia, some of the things he said before the game, he said if Vandy played its game, it wouldn't be close. Well, it wasn't close in the end by the final score with a late Alabama touchdown. He also apparently did some profane things on the field, making gestures towards the Alabama students. And apparently they do this before every game. They practice victory formation during warmups where he takes a snap and he kneels down, he throws the ball in the air as if they just won the game. Big deal. If that's their thing, if that helps get them juiced up, who cares? But I don't care what Diego Pavia said. Back off. I mean, just go celebrate with your fans, your family. Your team just won a big game over a ranked Vanderbilt team. The first time in decades and decades and decades and decades and decades that a ranked Alabama played a ranked Vanderbilt. And Alabama showed some pretty strong stuff in that game. And let's not forget, though, that it was a game. For 55 minutes, it was a one-score game. 55 of the 60 minutes, it was a one-score game before Alabama kicked its third field goal and made it a 9-point game, and then Jam Miller tacked on a late touchdown to distort the score, but a big win for Alabama. Auburn had the week off getting ready for a big game against Georgia. Hello, everyone. I'm Kevin Scarbinsky. If you can't tell, I'm juiced up today. I'm fired up talking about another big weekend of college football, what we just witnessed, what we have to look forward to. This is Scarbo Knows. Let's say hello to all of you out there watching, listening. I appreciate it. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe to the channel. That really is helpful. Would appreciate you doing that. And let's also say a shout out to our sponsor, Money Management Services. They are Birmingham's financial advisors. They're a family-owned, fee-only company. The Rice family, they've been in business for years. They take great care of you. They're good friends of mine. So check them out. We'll hear more from them later in the show. Okay, let's get into it. We are almost to the halfway point. Most teams have played either 5 or 6 games to this point in the season. So we're getting to the midpoint. And what did we learn, again, from Alabama? The things that Vanderbilt did to them last week, or last year, I should say, they did to Vanderbilt. They controlled time of possession. They had the upper hand in third down conversions, and they won the turnover battle. If not for 2 critical mistakes by Diego Pavia in the red zone, who knows? Maybe it's a different game. But what we saw in that game is what we told you would see at the end of last week on our last episode, and that Ty Simpson is a better quarterback than Diego Pavia. And he showed that despite some uncharacteristic mistakes, took some sacks in the red zone that he shouldn't have, should have thrown the ball away. Ty Simpson was very hard on himself on that point after the game. You have to appreciate the fact that despite the big numbers he put up, he was focusing, even in those moments of celebration after the game, in the post-game interview room, he was talking about what he needed to do better. the mistakes he made that he wished he hadn't and that he needs to correct going forward, which you would expect of a coach's son. He thinks the game as well as any quarterback in America. He sees the field as well as any quarterback in America. And some of the throws he makes, there aren't many college quarterbacks at work right now that can make those throws. Like that sideline streak touchdown to Jeremy Bernard late in the first half that pulled the game into a tie, 14-14. That is a big-time throw by Ty Simpson. So he proved it on the field, what we've believed, what I've believed for some time, that he's the best quarterback in the SEC. Excuse me, one of the best in the country as well. And if you didn't believe it before, you should believe it now. And he certainly outclassed Diego Pavia in a number of ways. But again, Mr. Cargo Shorts, stand down. You're not you're not doing yourself any favors. You're not making your program look good when you feel the need to go get in a shouting match with Diego Pavia. And Johnny Manziel, classy gentleman that he is, of course, made some obscene gestures towards the Alabama fans as well. Now he's a mentor to Diego Pavia. And as we said last week, one good thing that he can do for Diego Pavia is say, don't be like Johnny Manziel off the field, on the sideline. Be a better person than Johnny Football was for a long time. Hopefully he will clean up his act at some point and grow up. All right, enough about that. We're going to look forward now, because now it gets down to it. Now we get even more serious. And this is where Alabama and Auburn, well, this is where their head coaches differ. There are a lot of differences between Kalen DeBoer and Hugh Freeze. For example, developing a quarterback. Look at what Ty Simpson's doing in his first year as a starter in Tuscaloosa. Look at what Jackson Arnold has not done to this point in his first year as a starter at Auburn. A rather stark contrast there between the performance of their quarterbacks. How about calling plays, running an offense, putting together a plan? Hugh Freeze is the boss there at Auburn, and we saw how their offense sputtered at Oklahoma and just totally got caught in a ditch at Texas A&M. Now, those are two very good football teams. Oklahoma has statistically the best defense in America. So no great shame there, but that's your job. You're supposed to be an offensive mind. The word genius almost slipped out. No one's ever really accused Hugh Freeze of being an offensive genius. And if you ever thought that, you should have been disabused of that notion some time ago, certainly after the last two games. So there's no comparison between the offensive brain trust at Alabama with Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb and Nick Sheridan and their counterparts at Auburn, Hugh Freeze, Kent Austin, Derek Nix. It's night and day. It's men against boys, pros versus amateurs, however you want to characterize it. However, there is another characteristic that sets Kalen DeBoer apart, not only from Hugh Freeze in a big way, but from almost every other coach in America. And that's how his teams perform against ranked opponents. Let's look at the numbers, and they are jaw-dropping. Big game Kalen, well, that's exactly what he's been. Think about this. Going back to his time at Fresno State, look at how his teams have fared against ranked opponents. Now, we know rankings can be wonky. We know they can be out of whack, especially early in the season when you don't have much data to go on. But that's very, very strong. 2-1 at Fresno State, 10-1 at Washington in 2 years, 10-1 against ranked opponents with the Huskies. And at Alabama, he improved to 5-1 after beating Georgia 2 weeks ago and then taking down Vanderbilt on Saturday. So you add it all up, and Kalen DeBoer, since 2020 is 17-3 against ranked opponents. And those 17 wins since 2021, only one coach in the Football Bowl subdivision has more wins over ranked teams in that time, and it's Kirby Smart. And oh, by the way, Kirby Smart is 0-2 against Kalen DeBoer, as is Dan Lanning, as is Steve Sarkisian. And we'll get to Sark in a little while, as Texas continues to underperform and underwhelm after that loss in the swamp against a reinvigorated DJ Lagway and the Florida offense. So, elite. And I don't know exactly why this is that DeBoer's teams play their best against the best, which is what you want. Certainly that was a characteristic of Nick Saban's teams at Alabama. Maybe it's his calm demeanor. He doesn't get too high or too low. He doesn't get overly emotional. You don't see him out there throwing his headset. Occasionally he gets riled up. Occasionally he lets his feelings show positively and negatively, and fans love when he does. And he does listen to the fans, and he does listen to reason and logic, because he has adopted the black hoodie as his game day attire now. I don't know what the exact record is, but it's really strong since he's worn that black hoodie at Alabama. But there's something about the way he approaches these games. First of all, you have to have the talent to compete with ranked opponents. And he's had that at Washington, and he has it at Alabama. But it's more than that. And whatever it is, whether it's his ability to develop a quarterback who stays calm in critical moments, the way Ty Simpson did. As we said, Alabama was chasing Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt scored first. Alabama had to come back and tie. Vanderbilt scored again. Alabama had to bounce back and knot it up before halftime. But in each case, they did. And then Alabama took the lead and never lost it in the third quarter. So there's something about developing quarterbacks, about calling the right plays at the right time, about projecting an air of self-confidence that's not arrogance. It is knowing that when the time comes, when you have to make a play, you're going to put your players in position to make those plays, and they're going to execute. And to go 17 out of 20 against ranked opponents, that's ridiculous. That's beyond good. That is elite. And like I said, only Kirby Smart has won more games against ranked opponents since 2021 than Kalen DeBoer in the entire football bowl subdivision. So Alabama's got more coming. We're going to talk about the upcoming schedule for Alabama and Auburn in a moment. How has Hugh Freeze performed against the best of the best? How has his Auburn team shown up or not against ranked opponents? Let's look at his numbers. Not so good. Overall, he's 14-31 against ranked opponents. That's throughout his head coaching career. He was 0-1 at Arkansas State. At Ole Miss, he was 12-16, which is not bad. Not bad at all if you look at other coaches, and we're going to do that in a moment. And in fact, his best year was in 2015 with the Rebels. He went 5-1 against ranked opponents. And of course, the games everyone remembers, 2014 and 2015, he beat Alabama in Oxford one year, back in Tuscaloosa the next. So 12-16 is respectable as a record against ranked opponents, especially if you're not at a traditional power, and Ole Miss certainly isn't that. Although Lane Kiffin has lifted them to heights that Hugh Freeze only dreamed about. At Liberty, Freeze was 1-4 against ranked opponents. And then the number that just has to change. It has to improve. And at Auburn, he's in his third season, and they are 1-10 against ranked opponents. It doesn't matter at this point that you gave Georgia a scare 2 years ago in Jordan-Hare Stadium, and Brock Bowers had to make Brock Bowers type of plays on a final touchdown drive for the Bulldogs to pull out of a 2020 tie late in the fourth quarter. It doesn't matter that you led Alabama in 2023 inside the final minute, and Alabama had to pull out Gravedigger, the play that allowed Jalen Milroe to hit Isaiah Bond in the corner of the end zone in an incredible throw and catch to rescue the day to get Alabama, help get Alabama into the playoff. They had to beat Georgia in the SEC championship game to actually get there in Saban's last season. Coming close doesn't count. They don't pay you for close. They pay you for W's. And whether it is, for example, in that 2023 Iron Bowl, the inexplicable, inexcusable decision to rush two guys. They dropped 8. They rushed 2. One guy, I don't know if I guess he was supposed to be a spy. He wasn't spying anybody. Jalen Milroe, as good a runner as he wasn't running 31 yards through the entire defense to score the winning touchdown. So that decision to allow the defense to sit back, to allow Jalen Milroe to sit back and wait and wait and wait and allow Isaiah Bond to come free in the back corner of the end zone, those are the kind of decisions that cost you games, and if you make enough of them, cost you a job. So coming close does not count. The only win that Hugh Freeze has over a ranked opponent in his time at Auburn came last year late in the season against Texas A&M, and it took 4 overtimes in Jordan-Hare Stadium, and it took Texas A&M dropping its final 2-point conversion. Dude was open, wide open. Ball hit him in a bad place, hit him in the hands. Then it hit the turf, and Auburn celebrated. And it was a big win. But Texas A&M certainly contributed to it. So not the kind of record that will earn you a contract extension. Not the kind of record that will instill confidence in your fan base, in your administration, in your boosters, that when you play the kind of teams you have to play every year, of teams you have to beat, if you want to climb back up the ladder in the SEC, because you're closer to the bottom than the top, and you've been there for some time if you're Auburn, these are the kind of games you have to win. You don't have to win them all. You have to do better than 1-10. Much better. And they will get another opportunity this Saturday, a very big opportunity. We'll talk about the Georgia game in a few minutes as well. All right, so we've seen one extreme, Kalen DeBoer, 17-3. We've seen another extreme, Hugh Freeze, 1-10 at Auburn against ranked opponents. What about some other coaches in the SEC? How are they performing against ranked opponents? Oh, wait, I got ahead of myself. Let's compare Hugh Freeze first, before we look at the Sarkisians and the Kiffins and the Smarts, the Drinkwitzes and guys like that. Let's look at the man who preceded Hugh Freeze as the Auburn head coach. Is this an Auburn thing or is it a Hugh Freeze thing? And if you look at these numbers, it tells you it's a Hugh Freeze thing, which was a continuation of a Brian Harsin thing. And that is not stepping up, not bringing your best when your best is required, when you're playing ranked opponents. Brian Harsin was 2-8 in those games at Auburn. Gus Malzahn, 20-27. And again, in this case, a losing record, when you play as many ranked opponents as you play in the SEC, a losing record isn't a terrible thing, because Gus did win his share. Not enough, and not some that, most notably the national championship game against Florida State. When you've got it in hand, or so it seemed, and you let it get away, that one will sting the Auburn family forever, and probably will sting Gus Malzahn forever as well. Gene Chizik was 9-11 against ranked opponents in his 4 years at Auburn. Of course, he had the big year in 2010 with Cam Newton. They're going to honor Cam at Jordan-Hare Stadium this Saturday night. That will be interesting to see. I'm sure that will just stoke the fan base even more. Tommy Tuberville came very close to breaking even. He was 22-23 against ranked opponents in his 10 years at Auburn. Terry Bowden, not as good, 7-14. And Pat Dye, the gold standard, the man who brought Auburn football into the modern era, who allowed Auburn to look Alabama in the eye and not blink. He was 21-23 with 3 ties against ranked opponents. And one of the reasons that he doesn't have a winning record in that spot is because his last couple of years, as he was dealing with health issues, as Auburn was dealing with an NCAA investigation, and 60 Minutes was doing features on the Tigers that were not complimentary, they fell off the last couple of years. Or Pat Dye would have a winning record against ranked opponents during his time at Auburn. So Freeze is not measuring up to his predecessors at Auburn in a lot of ways. That's just another against ranked opponents. So what's happening in the rest of the SEC? Who else is stepping up or not in these games? Kirby Smart, of course, is the leader in every way imaginable among SEC coaches right now. He's 38-17 in his time at Georgia, going back to 2016, his first season against ranked opponents. No surprise there, and he's won 21 of these games since 2021. That's the best in the country. Lane Kiffin is breaking even at Ole Miss. He's 9-9. Steve Sarkisian at Texas, 12-13. Of course, that loss to Florida does not fit in this category because the Gators were not ranked going into that game Saturday in the Swamp. Eli Drinkwitz, who will take on Alabama this coming Saturday and Auburn the following Saturday, he's 7-14 against ranked opponents. Not great, not terrible. And this one's a little surprising, maybe not. Brian Kelly at LSU, only 5-9 against ranked teams. That is one reason why the folks who love the Tigers aren't overly thrilled with Brian Kelly. And, of course, they added one in the loss column in their last game against Ole Miss. And the backup quarterback, Trinidad Chambliss, who looks nothing like a backup quarterback and everything like one of the better quarterbacks in the SEC. So you don't have to win half of your games against ranked opponents, but you got to win some. And if you want to be a champion, some years, and there are certain special years where you have to step up. And your team has to find its best self against the best opponents. Here's some fun facts. I was doing some research for this in my column, and you can check that out today. And every week, twice a week on AL.com, the Birmingham News, subscribe. A lot of good stuff there. A lot of good writers doing a lot of good work. But I was looking this up. This is pretty amazing. And this shows you the evolution of the SEC and how expansion and the amount of money that's been put into the sport across the league has made the competition greater than ever. Do you know, in Bear Bryant's 25 years as the head coach at Alabama, you know how many times his teams played 3 consecutive ranked opponents? Once. Just once. In 1978, they beat number 10 Nebraska. They beat number 11 Missouri, long before Missouri joined the SEC, and then lost to number 7 USC. And, of course, that 1978 season in Alabama ended with the goal line stand against Penn State and another national championship. So in 25 years, only once did Alabama play 3 consecutive ranked opponents, which they're about to do Saturday because they're going to Missouri to play number 14 Mizzou in that early kickoff. And remember, early kickoffs on the road generally favor the visiting team because the home crowd is not juiced up, hasn't had all day to party and get wound up. Not that that crowd won't be juiced on Saturday. This is one of the biggest home games in Missouri history. But it's a little different at 11 o'clock in the morning. It's usually advantage visitors in those spots. So this will be the 3rd straight game that Alabama plays against a ranked opponent. And it's going to be 4 straight next week because it's the 3rd Saturday in October. And unless something really squirrely happens in the Tennessee-Arkansas game Saturday, Tennessee's going to come in there and they'll be ranked. So that will be 4 straight ranked opponents on the Alabama schedule. How many times do you think Nick Saban in his 17 years as the Crimson Tide head coach, faced 4 consecutive ranked opponents. Only twice. In 2016, they swept those ranked opponents. They ran the table against everyone all the way to the national championship game and came up short as Clemson put together a national championship winning drive at the end. In large part because the Alabama defense was gassed, because the Alabama offense couldn't stay on the field, the Alabama defense couldn't get off the field, and Clemson ran 99 snaps that night. And they won the national championship, the first of 2 for Dabo Swinney. So that was one occasion, that one season in which Nick Saban faced 4 straight ranked opponents while he was at Alabama. The other time it happened was 2022. And in those 4 games, Alabama went 2-2 and came up short of making the SEC championship game and, of course, did not reach the playoff. So it is not normal. It is not common. It is not something that has happened very often in Alabama history that they've played 4 consecutive ranked opponents. They're in the middle of that kind of stretch now. And if LSU is still ranked at the beginning of November, and if Oklahoma is still ranked on November 8th, Alabama will play 6 out of 7 games against ranked opponents. Welcome to the new SEC. And welcome next year to the opportunity, the likelihood that you're going to have more of these stretches where you're going to play ranked opponent after ranked opponent after ranked opponent. The kind of thing you don't have to do in the Big Ten, you don't have to do in the ACC, you don't have to do in the Big 12. And you can talk about poll bias and SEC teams getting the benefit of the doubt. I was glad to see in the latest AP poll that after Texas laid an egg at Florida and after Penn State face planted in the Rose Bowl against an overwhelming crowd of about 15,000, not 100,000, about 15,000 on a blue out, UCLA, which had not even led a single game all season, took down Penn State the week after Penn State did what big game James Franklin usually does, and that's lose to a top 10 opponent. So it was nice to see the AP drop both Texas and Penn State out of the rankings, because here we are a week into October, and neither of those teams, which were 1 and 2 in the preseason AP poll, has beaten a Power 4 opponent. You don't deserve to be ranked if you haven't done that. And by the way, on Twitter on Sunday, I mentioned after the poll came out, I said Auburn would deserve to be ranked more. I didn't say Auburn deserved to be ranked. They didn't. They got exactly 1 point in the AP poll this week. There were 39 teams that got votes. Auburn got 1 point because one voter put them number 25 on his or her ballot. But at least Auburn has beaten Baylor. At least Auburn has beaten a power conference opponent. And Auburn has won a road game. That was also, of course, at Baylor. Not saying Tigers should be ranked. I'm saying they would have deserved it more than Texas or Penn State. None of them were in the top 25, and that's probably fair. So what's coming up for the Tide and the Tigers? What are we looking forward to the rest of the season? What does the road forward look like for both of them? And you're going to see a lot of numbers in front of a lot of names. Look at Auburn. This is a crossroads game for Hugh Freeze. And we're going to talk more about this later in the week on our next episode, this Auburn-Georgia game. Auburn, of course, has not beaten Georgia since the 2017 regular season. That's unconscionable. For a rivalry with that kind of history and tradition, the Deep South's oldest rivalry, this is almost a must-win for Hugh Freeze. Because you've had a week off. Georgia played Alabama, and then they had a get-well game against Kentucky, which is easily the worst team in the SEC. But this is a night kickoff, which they haven't had in this rivalry in Jordan-Hare in a long time. The crowd, and we've said this before, Auburn fans are loyal. They love their school. They love their program. They have a lot of doubts about Hugh Freeze, but they will fill that building, and they will be loud, and they will be proud, and they will come out of their seats when Cam Newton is honored, as they should. So Auburn's going to have a lot of intangibles on its side in that game. And then the next week, though, they get number 14, Missouri. But that's another good spot if you're going to get a ranked team. They play Missouri the week after Missouri has to deal with Alabama. And historically, at least through the Saban era, the effect of playing a team after Alabama has gotten through with them, because Alabama, of course, used to play joyless murder ball. They used to beat you up, not just beat you. And it was tough for whoever they played to bounce back the next week. But they're not quite the same physical team, although it was nice to see Caden Proctor, Refrigerator Proctor, get a carry in a short yardage situation against Vanderbilt on Saturday. So let's see. In the last 2 weeks, Proctor has caught a pass, caught a bubble screen, almost scored a touchdown, carried the ball, got a first down. So the only thing left is letting him throw the ball. And he can throw the ball. Tuck that memory away. At some point this season, I fully believe you will see Caden Proctor throw a forward pass. Can't wait to see when Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb pull that rabbit out of their hats. But you're going to have to beat ranked teams. Auburn's got Georgia, Missouri, Vanderbilt, and Alabama left. Alabama's got Missouri this week, Tennessee next week. Then LSU and Oklahoma back-to-back in November. So history shows us, recent history tells us that Alabama is uniquely equipped under Kalen DeBoer to continue to look like a championship contender. Wimp Sanderson asked me this question on the radio not that long ago. He didn't ask me who was the best team in the SEC. He said, is there a best team in the SEC? Which was an interesting twist on the question. My answer was, well, of course, there is a best team, but that team has yet to identify itself. That's still the case, but the field of possible answers is narrowing, and Alabama certainly is on the short list. Alabama could be the best team in the SEC. Alabama could turn out to be the SEC's best chance to win a national championship. We can't make that statement just yet, but they're in good position. So's Ole Miss. So's Oklahoma. So's Texas A&M. As for Auburn, you're at a crossroads. You're 3-2 overall, but you're 0-2 in the SEC. You've played your two toughest road games already and dropped them both. And you looked worse on offense in the second game at A&M than you did in the first game at Oklahoma. What have they figured out during the bye week? What changes have they come up with during the week off? It wasn't a week off. They just didn't play Saturday. In fact, they worked overtime more than they normally would on an off week, Hugh Freeze told us. So what have they figured out? What kind of changes are we going to see Saturday night against Georgia? They better have come up with something, because Kirby Smart has had Auburn's number for far too long. And if Hugh Freeze wants to be the Auburn coach long-term, and by long-term I mean get a fourth year in 2026, he's got to figure out a way to beat Georgia or Alabama, I believe. No one has said that. That's not reporting. That's my belief right now. That if he can't beat Georgia and if he can't beat Alabama, he's going to have a hard time gaining the kind of support he needs going into year 4 or getting a year 4. I think it's going to be difficult for him. But the devil's in the details. What do the games look like? Is the final score closer than the actual game itself, such as the Texas A&M game? It wasn't a one-score game. Texas A&M controlled that game from virtually start to finish, and Auburn's offense looked as inept as it has in years. So what have you figured out, Hugh Freeze? Can you find a way to beat a ranked opponent? Because you got plenty of them ahead. It's going to be fun to see. All right, that's going to do it for us today. I'm Kevin Scarbinsky. This is Scarbo Knows. Thank you to executive producer Brendan Martin on the Sidelines.live network. Thank you to you for watching and listening. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, give us a like, give us a subscription, hit the subscribe button. And thank you especially to our sponsor, Money Management Services. Check them out. See ya.
Since 1992, Money Management Services in Birmingham has provided individuals and business owners with trusted, fee-only financial advice. We're more than advisors, we're your financial family. From retirement planning to tax strategies and estate planning, our team builds personalized wealth management plans tailored to your life. At Money Management Services, we treat you like family, because when you walk through our doors, you become part of ours.